Okay, so following our Dynaco Stereo 70 episodes, and this is a crucial video. I actually make a couple of them because it's a bigger topic than it could be covered in a single video, even just as an introductory thing. So now I will talk to you about what sort of speakers work well with single-ended triodes and which are optimal for musical sounding systems. So it's not just sets and low power amplifiers, but also the Dynaco Stereo 70, Stereo 35, and these will be solutions that I present to you if you are looking for musical sound. So when you listen to music for your own enjoyment and you don't want the typical audiophile sound which is prevalent today. So when you think about high-end and audiophile, then people think about that sort of flavor in sound, which is, I would say, forced emphasis on the frequency extremes and more of a clinical sound where you are spaced out, distanced from the music, and you are looking at the sound itself as a spectator. So what I'm going to show you now, these speakers offer the opposite spectrum. So these speakers involve you with the music. There's no distance between you and the music, and you think about the experience that you are listening to music, and you will not feel that you are listening to sound. So I think there's this really big difference in experiences, whether you experience music or whether you experience sound. And here we go. This is how you can experience sound. How you can experience music and musicality. And for the core of musicality is mid-range. And I would say, even if you go for the sound aspect, if your mid-range is not right, then you will not be satisfied with your result. So if you are an audiophile who wants a modern solution, and you are constantly chasing the frequency extremes, you have added that super tweeter, that ultra tweeter, you have added a subwoofer, and now you upgraded to stereo subs, now you have quad subs, but the bass is still not right and you're still missing something from your life, then most probably it is mid-range. So this is the strategy that I have followed when I started out as an audiophile. I focused first on the mid-range because mid-range is what demands 90% of our brain's processing power. So when we listen to music, we essentially listen to mid-range. The high frequencies and the bass, that's just icing on the cake. It's less than 10% of your brain's processing capacity. But due to, I would say, your current audiophile education and hype and what is fashionable today, everyone is obsessed about the frequency extension. I would say there's nothing wrong about paying attention to bass and high frequencies. It's quite important, but if you start with that and you have zero clue about mid-range clarity, about having a good mid-range, then you will never reach a satisfactory music system. And this is what 99% of audiophiles miss from their life, is that you need foundation for your music system, and that foundation is the mid-range. If you have a great mid-range, you can later on expand it to a full range system. But if you start with the frequency extremes, you cannot fill in the mid-range with an afterthought. It cannot be an afterthought. It has to be there from the very start. So how did it happen for me? What are my experiences with? So this is like a short list that I can recommend right away. And all of these are built on mid-range. There are some fantastic drivers I can recommend. Some are really easily obtainable. Others are kind of like a rare, and others are even more rare quality. So when you look at the Altec 755 drivers, those are 8-inch full range drivers. When you look for the later series, like for example the E, that's a ferrite driver, and it's easier and cheaper to find, but it's still in the very expensive category. So if you want to look for a more vintage, more interesting sound, and you are already tired of the Fostex, then that might be your next step, especially if you go for the 755A. I have not had the fortune to play around with that, but those who had, they swear by it, and they just toss out the rest of their speakers and just have that 755A playing in their cabinet. And this is also a solution for those of you who do not have big space. You can use the 755 to build a reasonably sensitive bookshelf loudspeaker that will play extremely well with your single-ended triodes, low-power triodes, and the stereo 70 or stereo 35 as well. The diatone P610 is also not that common a driver, but you can now buy the new ones that they are currently making them, I think in Korea or something. And I haven't heard the new P610s. They say that the original ones are a little bit better, but if they are even half as good as the original one, actually they look exactly the same. You can't tell the drivers apart. The original one, I recently heard them. A good buddy of mine, Jeff, he has a pair of diaton speakers with these drivers, and we listened to them in his main system right after listening to his full-on voice of the theater A5s, which are just I would say like easily within the top 3 sound I ever heard in my life. And after listening to those big Altecs in his system, which was using a low power amplifier, it was a pentode amp, not single-ended but push-pull, but only just 5 watts output. So we are still in the low power zone, and we use the exact same amp, exact same everything to drive the tiny diatones, which were really dwarfed by those humongous Altecs, and they gave the same tonality, the same quality of mid-range that the Altecs gave, and they gave a big sound. You would have never imagined that those tiny cabinets can project a sound. It felt that those tiny speakers were at least 200-liter cabinets. They could play with such authority, and they produced real, true instruments. So anyway, those are the 2 more interesting journeys, and these are not the cheapest drivers. But if you want to look for really cheap, really bargain stuff, I have the Alley Cats here, which I had amazing experience with. One of them is that you can be on the lookout for TV sets that people get rid of. These are like TV sets from the 60s and 70s made by Zenith in the US, if you can find that. Or you can also use old car speakers, which are these 6x9 oval speakers, And these are special because in those days they didn't really, they needed to shield the CRT screens from the speakers magnets, and that's why they use the Alnicos, because the Alnico speakers, they do not radiate their magnetic field, so they are made in such a way that the magnetic field is completely within the basket of the driver. And when we have our modern speakers, modern drivers, which use ferrite or neodymium magnets, they radiate a ton of magnetism. And I think that's a critical difference between them, and that's why Alnicos tend to sound way better, because magnetism works both ways. They not only radiate magnetism, but if you have any kind of electromagnetic interference nearby a ferrite driver, the voice coil and the magnetic structure is going to pick it up. So that's why when you have traditional loudspeakers, two-way, three-way, four-way, each of those drivers are interfering with another's job. And that's why when you have a two-way speaker and ferrite drivers, they are going to not just affect each other in an acoustic way, which manufacturers try to evade by making cabinets such as Wilson Audio is making, where each driver is sitting in its own unique cabinet and separate enclosure, so they do not acoustically couple with each other with their back pressure. However, because they are ferrite drivers, they will still magnetically couple with each other. And when you use Alnico drivers, they are not coupling to each other, and they are not coupling to your amplifiers, transformers, or your cell phones, whatever radiation. So I think the immunity that the Alnico has from all the noises, all the electromagnetic mess that's in your room, that makes their tone to have such clarity and such natural sound. So one of that, so if you think that usually Alnico magnet drivers are more expensive than the ferrite magnets, particularly because they are more rare, and when something is harder to find, prices go up. But if you can find those old TV speakers, then it's for free. You can just grab it. Or there's another one, the big TV set. When you look at the Zenith drivers called 49CZ, that's stamped in the driver. Those are also Alnicos, and I had one of those. I found a tossed out Zenith console and put it in the car's backseat, took out the drivers and built open baffles from that, and they worked fantastically. And how good those drivers can be, I will let you know in the next episode. Thank you for checking in. Please like and subscribe. Bye bye.